All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I apologize again for the third or fourth time. That's all on me, not on our IT. I'll start off right away by thanking Eileen on the other end. She's our IT and our host. We appreciate it. This probably wouldn't be possible without her because she handles everything. And as you can see, I couldn't even start my computer to get on here. So we appreciate that, Eileen. You saw the cover of the newsletter. We did lose another member. Unfortunately, it's seeming like our Chronicles each month has quite a few obituaries in it. We had a bad run in 2020, a lot of things. Hopefully we'll have less obituaries in 2021. But Barbara Farrell, she did pass away. She's a longtime member of Tampa Bay Fossil Club, avid fossil hunter, especially out in the Badlands with her group of girls. They called the Badlands Babes. I think she was the queen of the group, but she will be missed, especially at Fossil Fest. Very nice lady. Again, welcome to 2021. I'll tell you right off the bat that we will be giving away prizes tonight. Some dinosaur notepads, two unassociated, they're composite deer toes. I can tell you somebody glued them together backwards, so you may have to redo them if you want them to look.
Is it articulated? Is that the word?
They're articulated. Well, I almost said associated. They're not associated. They're a composite of different animals, but to make their toes, they're really not glued together right, but I don't know if anybody else would notice. Actually, everybody, if I noticed, everybody would notice. And last, I think it's a Nidia. We'll give that away tonight. And I want to thank the folks who have won in the past for helping me get these prizes to them through dropping them off. I am a little late. I still owe Meredith Miller. I have her Mastodon replica from last month. I will drop off to one of her sons who we've been in communication and get those out. But I'll only be giving my phone number out once. We do it old school, just like on the night rock and roll call-in show. You call in, we'll take like the certain number of caller. But I'm only going to give my number out once, and it'll be at the end because Eileen has to go in and scrub it out of the video. She doesn't like it on there forever. So, but we will give those out tonight. January, everybody, we're hoping that just simply turning the page in a calendar will change a lot of things for us, being at work, at home, in the world with this virus. But I can tell you that this is our season. If you fossil hunt in Florida, you know the rivers will start going down. I know they're still a little bit high right now, but the rivers will go down. They will clear up, and there's fossils out there to find. And a lot of folks, I continually hear folks tell me that you got to be a scuba diver and have a secret spot to find stuff, and you don't. If you saw the newsletter, you saw some of the sloth that Rob Carlson's pulling out. Rob's just using a shovel and a screen. He's not even snorkeling. So the fossil is Peace River. He don't mind me telling you, it's in the Peace River, and it's associated. Some of those vertebrae snap right together. I saw them in person. They're beautiful. They're like the Brea Preservation. They're beautiful, but you just got to get out and find this stuff. You got to go out and start hunting fossils. You're not going to find them sitting on your couch. You don't have to scuba dive. Just get out and start hunting. Field trips will be our first one for the year and first one in a while. Fred and Carissa Hendershot will be taking folks out at Brownsville on January 23rd for a group hunt. The river should be low enough. We don't expect any storms to change that. There's been a lot of storms in the past, though, that have stirred the river up, so you can expect to find some good fossils this season. And if you don't go with Fred and Carissa, go on your own. You can, as complicated as an airboat or just walk in with a shovel and some cutoffs. Either way will work. I'm telling you, the fossils are out there to find if you just go. If you're not finding fossils, you're not trying. And what's the fisherman say on television? If you're too busy to go fossil hunting, you're just too busy. So get out there and find some fossils. This is our season. If you're new to fossil hunting, check out our Facebook page. And there's lots of folks on there going. A lot of folks will offer to take you along with them when they go, whether it be walking in or canoe trips or whatever they have going on. Some more fossil fixes over the winter here. I don't know the name of the company, but Jurassic Park drive-through is over at St. Peter, Tropicana Field in St. Petersburg. It's $60 a car. I hear it's pretty good. You get 4 or 5 people in your car that you trust not to give you the cold, you can split the cost or just, I guess, wear a mask and be safe. But I hear it's pretty good. It's hard to imagine driving through would be as fun as walking through it, but they say it's pretty good setup over there. Also, the Lee County Fossil Club down in Fort Myers on February 20th, they're going to have their fossil show. They call theirs the Fossil Festival at the Shell Factory. It is February 20th. I guess it's just one day from what it looks like. Please try to get to their show. We'll be begging people to go to our show come March. The clubs need attendance at these shows to survive. Most of the clubs get a lot of their financial support through the shows they do and their attention in the media where they attract new members. Please try to go to the show, even if you haven't drove to Fort Myers to go to their Fossil Festival before. Please try to do it this time. And I've mentioned this before. Nobody has asked me to ask you to give extra money, but I don't know what they do. They charge $6 to get in, give them $7. Again, they didn't ask that. I'm just asking you to do that. Try to help these clubs out. We all need to survive. Not just our club. All the clubs need to survive. Talking about Fossil Fest. Well, I guess here we go again. We're going to try. Disney World's open. A lot of other things are open. We can't just not try to have our Fossil Fest in March. So we are attempting to run that. The biggest thing we are concerned with right now, I'll give you those dates real quick. It is March 19th is the setup. March 20 and 21 is the show. What we need the most right away is volunteers. There's certainly going to be some folks out there who can't volunteer because they are in some sort of compromised position with themselves or their family where they won't be able to go into public gatherings. Although when talking to the fairgrounds, we will be limited on numbers, but the numbers really won't affect us for the size of our show that we run. They're supposed to have hand washing stations set up. We will put out hand sanitizing stations as well at the tables. They are requiring that masks be worn on a mouth and nose at all their facilities. So it's something we can do if we all cooperate. And I know everybody doesn't like or want to wear the mask or think they should wear the mask. It's not a club rule. It's the fairgrounds rule. And we have to abide by that when we're there. Trust me, nobody wants to argue over why you should have to wear it if you shouldn't have to wear it. Nobody wants to go there. We don't talk in the Fossil Club. We don't talk about politics. We don't talk about religion. And this is, we're not in person, but on game day on Wild Card Sunday, like today, we don't talk about football scores because some people have the games taped. So those are 3 things we don't talk about. But volunteers, my wife's seen us posting a notice on Facebook right now for folks to contact her to start scheduling their time. I'd appreciate if you start earlier than you did. Like I mentioned a moment ago, please start early on that. It helps us a lot. You do get free admission, of course, for the whole weekend, free parking, free t-shirt. We always say free lunch. I'm sure we'll figure that out. As far as having food, we'll have to see how things are working in this world 90 days from now. It may end up having to be some kind of sealed or packaged something or the other, but we'll figure it out. Nobody will starve, I promise you that. Contact Sina. Her email is Tampa Bay Fossil Club at msn.com, which is easy to remember. Tampa Bay Fossil Club at msn.com. We also start collecting items this time of year for Fossil Fest, a silent auction, which I'm hoping Phil Mathis will be able to run for us this year. If you have items for silent auction, just hold on to them now. And minimally, if you can drop them off at some point at one of our homes to somewhere near where you live, or just bring it on the Friday morning of setup. That helps us a lot. I know that Phil likes to get that stuff as far in advance as he can, so he's not seeing it all fresh that morning and having to deal with it all and sort it all out. But, well, again, with things being what they are, we'll just have to figure things out as we go. Same thing with the kids' fossil mine. If you have stuff for the kids' fossil mine, please hold on to that until we either meet again before the show or drop them off Friday morning of setup, or get with one of us if you have a bunch of stuff and maybe we can meet somewhere, or some of our board members live close to where you live or where you work, and we can get that done. I haven't talked to him about it, but I'm assuming Bill Fosher, he's our vice president and our treasurer, will also serve as our display case chairman. And his his email is in the newsletter. I'm not going to give that out on across the internet here, but it is in the newsletter. If you want to set up a fossil case for display, please let him know. We are limited on how many we have. I think it's usually 20 to 30 of them. And the cases are a great way to show the public. I think people are amazed by all the things we have at Fossil Fest, but they really are amazed that our people, amateurs, find the stuff that we have on display there. And I think that's what hooks them into giving this fossil thing a try and giving the club a try, is because they see that you can find this stuff right here without having to travel all over the world to find some of these exotic, or what they think are exotic animals. So please check Cena's notice on Facebook, or email her again at Tampa Bay Fossil Club at msn.com to start signing up for volunteer positions. And all I can tell you is we're doing our best, and hopefully things are getting a little better. They may be worse. We may, God forbid, we don't have to cancel on the morning of setup like we did last year. That was terrible. We lost a lot of work getting prepared. Cena, Barbara, Bill, a lot of folks did a lot of work in the background preparing for Fossil Fest that we just threw in the garbage and was able to use. But no, everybody got kicked in the teeth in 2021, so not just us. Sorry? 2020. I'm sorry, we got kicked in the teeth in 2020. My wife's in the background to correct me from Fossil Show, Fossil Fest. I think that, so I mentioned the prizes. So when our speaker tonight, Chris DeLorey, I knew that. Chris DeLorey, I was reading his name of his company here, my crappy handwriting. Chris DeLorey, he's a favorite at Fossil Fest. If you haven't been around long enough to know him by face and name, he usually has a ton of clean modern skulls, which people love to buy for the exotic nature of some of them, and some are common. Myself for raccoon, possum, fox, wolf, different things like that, we buy from him for comparative. People always come up to me with a raccoon tooth or a possum tooth, and I say, well, you got to go over there and buy some of those skulls. They're cheap. I don't $20 for a possum skull or something like that for a raccoon as well. And you can identify these separate teeth yourself, because they are tricky if you don't see them all the time. But you'll learn quickly how to tell the difference. But he also does. He has worked for the Brevard County Zoo. I don't believe he's there. And he'll correct me when he gets on here in a second if I've got some of his best stuff. We've heard the stories before. Some guy called the police and complained that a guy was driving across 95 or I-10 or something with a load of dead bodies. And it turns out it was just Chris picking up a dead rhino from some zoo somewhere, laying a bed of stink across the whole state that about ruined everybody's lunches. He would be called in anytime there needed to be a modern animal prepped. He's very popular with that when he comes to our meetings. He hunts dinosaurs. He has an educational biofacts company. He does has an outlet called Dino Depot, and he also is known as Dr. Dino. But he always wants to diversify or change up his presentation to us. But people always want to see the modern prep. So, and he's also, I should mention, he's also been on. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this. He's been on the Dinosaur Hunters. I think he's been on there as well. So he's kind of a celebrity. But so this time he's learned how, he's kind of figured out a way to talk about prepped modern skulls and their pathologies in modern skulls to compare them to prehistoric fossilized pathologies in the Ice Age and further back. I want to thank him for being here tonight, because I know he's very, very busy. And as a matter of fact, he told me earlier that as soon as he's done with us, he's closing his computer, jumping in the car, and driving to New Orleans, probably to pick up a rhino or something. But anyway, Chris DeLorey, I hope you can hear me. I appreciate you being here. She's going to turn the screen over to you, and thank you.
Hey guys, I am Chris DeLorey. Thanks a lot, Mike. Mike probably talked longer than I did about what I do. I am Chris DeLorey. For 24 years, I did run the education department at the Brevard Zoo. Before that, I was actually a middle school teacher for 8 years, science teacher, and have been a fossil bone enthusiast most of my life. I also am known as Dr. Dino. That's a character that I use with some of our educational programs. We started using it back in 2012 with the zoo with our dino presentations. In fact, I often bring up the fact that when we came up with the idea, I thought it was a horrible idea. Dr. Dino, the goofy character. I'm a science teacher, a scientist, but it worked out really well. It allows people to, or allows me to connect sometimes with guests who may not understand why we all love fossils and the natural history, and it makes it a little bit more approachable. And so it's worked really, really well. We've done a lot of presentations. I've done presentations at zoos around the world. I mean, I've done them in Europe. I've done them over in Singapore and Hong Kong, and here all over the U.S. And it's a lot of fun. Like all of us, I love fossils. I love natural history. I love getting out there and looking for stuff, that exploration. But also as an educator, using hands-on teaching tools is amazing. I started doing modern skulls back when I was in college, which was over 30 years ago, which is a very long time ago, before Mike was born. That whole idea of allowing people to touch or kids and adults to connect with nature is something that is a really big thing to me, to all of us. We get out there, you find that shark teeth. One of my favorite fossil hunters who passed away a few years back was a gentleman named Bob Ernst, who owned a part of Sharktooth Hill. And this man had found thousands and thousands of makos and meg teeth. And every time you were with him, when he would find one, it was like a little kid on Christmas. He would be so, that is something I love seeing when we get out there and find stuff. But a lot of times when we're out fossil hunting, all of us have that opportunity. We find something, like Mike said, a tooth of a raccoon or a gator, and we're not sure what it is. And using some of the modern skulls works really well to help identify it. When you find that little jaw of a Pleistocene alligator, to you, it's a big deal. But to your neighbor, they're like, how do you know it's from an alligator? So having the modern skull to show the complete piece has always been something that we do a lot with. We do clean the skulls. In fact, one of the reasons I even started doing the Tampa Bay Fossil Show, I think I've been doing the show probably almost 30 years now, is there was often fossils I wanted, but I couldn't really afford them. I was a school teacher, but I could trade for them with modern stuff because it worked really well, is what a lot of other people wanted for their comparative fossil hunting. And it works well. But over the years, we have been able, as we're cleaning skulls, we clean skulls here in the Dino lab. We do modern stuff, we do prep, but we also do, we run a lot of things through our beetle colonies. That's how we clean them. At the very end tonight, we're going to go meet the beetles, all million of them. I'm going to give a name to everyone. No, I'm not going to do that, but we are going to go meet the beetles later on. The advantage you have by doing it through Zoom, you don't have to smell the beetles. You just get to see them. Now, using the skulls, we process a lot of bones to look and compare with. But over time, we built up a collection of pathological modern skulls, animals that have injuries that have healed. Interesting thing, over time, we also find fossil material very similar with pathologies. Oftentimes we think about an animal being injured or breaking a leg of a canid, a dog or a wolf or whatever, having a broken leg. We think, well, it's in captivity, so it survives, and that's the reason you see that pathology. But we find them in the fossil record. When you find a dire wolf limb bone that was broken and re-healed, and that animal lived 1 million years ago, there wasn't any veterinarians there to take care of it. Something allowed the animal to survive. Were they super tough, or were they a pack animal or some other thing? So we often love to compare some of the pathologies of fossils to our modern collection. And some of the pathologies are pretty extreme. This, and I want to point out, as I pointed out to Eileen and Mike earlier, I'm really good with fossils and bones. I'm not so tech savvy. Luckily, I have my team here in the Dino lab are going to help me if I do mess anything up, which very likely. But to show you one of the pathology, this is a modern alligator. That is its jaw structure. This animal lived with that broken jaw. You can see the bone healed all around up top there for many, many years. And alligators are a tough animal by nature, I think, because in the fossil record, we find unbelievable pathologies with alligators. Millions of years ago, where the animal was injured, had a jaw damage, and they survived it. And But with the modern ones, we find ones where they've had a wire wrapped around it because they ran into a barbed wire fence, but they survived that damage. Or like this alligator, this particular alligator was actually hit by a boat, we believe. It's the damage on the skull there. That wasn't later in life. That was when the animal was still alive. How do we know that? Because there's growth. A pathology is one where the animal survived the injury. One of the things we often want to point out to people is the difference between pathology and damage after the animal passed away. This is a modern alligator. Eileen was trying to help me make sure I could show these correctly. This is an alligator that took damage to the skull, but it was probably what actually killed. And Maddie's going to help me with this one with a little bit of background so we see if we can see it better. But that damage was after the animal was dead. That is damage. It's not pathological because the animal didn't survive. Whereas this is a very large python. I'm going to see if I can show that with the black background. If you look on the front of the jaw, and I'm really doing a bad job of it.
Get it closer.
Okay, we're going to get even closer. You'll see on one side of the jaw, it almost looks like it's twice as wide. That's not natural. This animal was shot in the head when it was alive. This is a reticulated python from Southeast Asia, and the animal survived. How do we know it survived? There's growth all around where the injury was. That's what a pathology is. It's when the animal survives that injury and you see growth, you see actual survival, and it's pretty extreme sometimes. A tough one, a very tough one to see, but this is a limb bone from a Jurassic dinosaur. It should be a very smooth limb bone, but that big bump around the edge, this is where the animal's limb probably broke. It's all the way around the bone. And 180 million years ago, this animal broke its leg, but did not die from it because the growth would not have existed. That's what the pathologies are that we're looking at. And we often use some of the modern ones to compare to it. One that most of us have probably found right here in Florida are alligator parts. This is a pair of scutes from a modern alligator. You'll see they're not smooth. They should look like that. That's a undamaged one. These pair have been damaged. We find it in some of the fossil scutes. Some of these scutes these are Pleistocene gator scutes, very common in Florida, but you want to look closely when you find one of those alligator scutes. You know, we find them up in the Peace River. You'll find them in a lot of other rivers. It's exciting to find it, but I've often seen fossil hunters say, oh, I've got 50 or 60 of those alligator scutes, but it's interesting to look closely at them. Do they have an injury that they survived? And as I said, gators are a good one to use because they often do. The neat thing about it is sometimes it's an injury they survive. Sometimes it's just evidence of predation after death or scavenging after death. One of my favorite that I use in my Dr. Dino presentations is this limb bone. This is a juvenile hadrosaur humerus. And how do I know it's a humerus? Because it's really funny. I'm just joking. It is a piece that we picked up many years ago in Montana. It was missing both of the ends. In fact, when I was out in the field, the center I was working with, they were like, well, you know, it's not really worth collecting. It's missing the ends. We don't have a lot of good information about it. It's unassociated. But we went ahead and jacketed, brought it back, and one of the volunteers in the Dino lab started prepping it. And when she removed the matrix, we were able to see, it's kind of hard to see that one, but near the bottom, that right there is a tooth drag, where a serrated tooth from a meat-eating dinosaur was dragged across as the meat was pulled off of it. Neat thing about it is they're so well detailed that when we used a microscope and had them measured, we could tell exactly what ate this hadrosaur juvenile 78 million years ago. Great thing about that is it's very clear evidence of what happened to the animal afterwards. What we can't tell is what killed it. Do we know, did that dinosaur kill this one? No, we don't know that. But we can tell that it was scavenged at least by a predatory Gorgosaurus 78 million years ago. So using that evidence, looking at it, is it an injury that survived? Is it an injury that killed it? That's a tougher one. Oftentimes I'll have people say, well, what killed that animal? We have a really neat Triceratops vertebrae, or part of one, and it's got what we consider bite damage, probably from T-Rex. Do we know the T-Rex killed it? No, we don't. Do we know for sure that it's from a bite, but we don't know it came from what animal, because there isn't a tooth drag to really look at. So the pathology helps us get information, tells a story about that animal's death, life. And it's great when you can compare it to a modern animal, but obviously we don't have any modern Triceratops. I'm hoping one of these days we will, but not yet. But it is a neat one to look at. Some of the other ones are more unique. And here's a set of mosasaur vertebrae that came out of Kansas. If you look closely on the side, it should be very smooth. That's not smooth. That is an injury the animal survived because there's growth around the injury. That is some of that pathology that we're looking at. The more growth, the longer the animal survived. And sometimes the growth hides the actual injury. One of my favorite ones we use a lot, and it's sort of a mistake I made for a very long time. This is a vertebrae, if you can see the whole thing, we believe in it, Edmontosaurus, that came out of a site in Montana. I collected this 25 years ago, and we've used it for a long time to show how we collect dinosaur bones or any fossils using the jacketing and then cleaning the matrix. This particular animal has a pathology on one of its processes. Big ball of bone there where you can see where it healed over and survived that injury. 20 years I've used this teaching people. Never really thought much about it until a young person in the lab, one of my volunteers, said, why don't we x-ray that pathology, see what caused it maybe? And I'm thinking, I don't know okay, we'll do it. We did x-ray it. Inside that pathology is the tip of a broken T-Rex tooth. This animal survived a bite attack from a T-Rex approximately 66 million years ago. That's an incredible story to tell because it shows us T-Rex may have been a great hunter, but will not always win. Sometimes the prey got away. Like any other predator, we see that, again, we use the analogies of modern animals that have survived bite damage. But that's a pretty cool one to be able to show somebody that the animal did survive. On the other hand, sometimes our pathologies are more obscure. This is the rib bone of a hadrosaur. What's unique about it, it has a pathology. It should be a very smooth bone. That's obviously not. But we believe this is not an injury pathology. We believe this is a cancerous growth on the bone of this dinosaur. Why do we believe that? Well, there isn't any obvious damage to the outside of the bone. That with a pathology, there should, from an injury, there should be damage. This one doesn't appear. This came from one of our partners, the Montana Dinosaur Center, an amazing dinosaur center out in Bynum, Montana, where they do some incredible field work. If you ever want to take your family out on a dino hunt and be part of real dinosaur paleontology, that's the place to go. I love working with them. Great people out there. The director's kind of goofy, Corey, but he's a good guy. But this is a rib bone from their collection that we have on loan that we use to talk about cancer growth. And cancer, we know, is something that does occur, sadly, today with humans, with animals, but it also occurs in our fossil record. And this is one of the ones that we use to talk about it because it doesn't appear to have an injury, but it definitely has a pathology. And that would be where the growth began from the inside from cancer. Some of the other ones we use are ones sometimes where the cancerous growth could be, or not necessarily cancerous, but the pathology. This is a vertebrae from an ankylosauriid, one of the dinosaurs, armored dinosaurs. Again, should be smooth surface, but it has some of that unusual rough growth pattern, arthritic growth. We see it in a lot of in modern elephants, you see it a lot. Large, heavy-bodied animals. In the mammoths, I've seen some beautiful mammoth vertebrae with some of that arthritic growth on the vertebrae, on the bones. And a lot of it is the weight and pressure of that animal. I've seen it with modern rhinos and fossil rhinos. We see it often in the feet, but it's that same thing. It's arthritic growth from the extra weight on the animal. So having the modern bones to compare to some of the fossils allow us to really look at what that pathology is. Sometimes the pathology is not necessarily something you may find in the fossil record. Sadly, in modern marsupials, a lot of the wallabies, kangaroos that are in captivity, they get a condition called lumpy jaw. It's another one that's kind of hard. Yeah, you can see it a little bit. It's a jaw. It's something that occurs. We'll see if Maddie's helping get a little more visual. This is a wallaby skull from a captive animal where the jaw gets an infection. It is something that I don't believe we would find in the fossil record because it's a condition that sometimes comes from the food they're eating, getting different materials into their jaw structure and then causing some virus or bacterial growth in there. That is something we don't necessarily see in the fossil record, but we do see it in modern ones. Whereas other ones, so another little gator, it looks like we put the gator on the skull on incorrectly. It's not. This animal is a captive animal that genetically the skull isn't forming correctly. And we do see that. Sadly, every once in a while in non-regulated breeding in captivity, sometimes some of you may have heard of an animal called a liger, where they have bred a lion and a tiger together. They're not supposed to breed, but they can breed. And genetically, they produce an offspring, but there's a lot of problems. The animal often has challenges. So even those become a very powerful teaching tool to remind people those are really not a good idea. Those animals have genetic issues that show up in the pathologies. We see some in the fossil record that they sometimes think is potentially from that, but we're not really sure that way. So in the Dino lab, we do a lot of modern skull cleaning to use it to compare to it. We also do a lot of fossil prep to compare to our modern skulls. So what we're going to try to do, I'm not sure how well it's going to work, but we're going to move a little bit here on the Zoom presentation. I'm going to pick up the laptop and we're going to go in. We're going to first see where Maddie, one of the team in the lab, is doing some prep work on some of the fossil material we have. And then we're going to go into the beetle room and go and see where we do actually our domestic beetles. Those are the unpaid workers who clean our skulls for us so we can actually use them for comparison. We have probably about 1 million in there. Like I said earlier, you guys have the advantage. You don't have to worry about the smell. But we're going to start off first going over and looking at some of the stuff we're prepping. We often get a chance to work on some very unique items in here. And one of the pieces that Maddie is working on right now is an Edmontosaurus skull. That's a duckbill dinosaur, one of the largest of the duckbills near the end of the dinosaur period. And that particular piece that she's working on was in a box for a very long time in a lot of pieces. And we're beginning to put the pieces back together and being able to see what story that particular skull can tell us. So we're going to go and see if we can try it. But first, I'm going to take a quick drink. Okay, let's see if I can do this correctly. Eileen may need to help us. There we've got Miss Maddie, and actually, Maddie, I'm going to put there. I'm going to step away for a second and put my mask on.
Oh, okay. Hi, everybody.
Maddie's got our Edmontosaurus jaw. We've got the pieces back together. Like I said, we're doing some prep work in here where we're trying to re-piece this together. It was put together in the field about 40 years ago. And it was put together with some super glue. So now we have to take it apart. We have a lot of that skull, but the pieces will be redone, cleaned up, and hopefully put back together again. And then we're going to look to see if we can find scavenging damage. Can we find any other injury? She's also working on a Florida piece, and that is one that we've all, if you've spent any time fossil hunting, we've all tried to put together a tusk back together again. This one was in quite a few pieces. We're putting it back to, or cleaning it, putting all the pieces back together. Neat thing about it, we have 2 tusks now in the lab that we're working on that both have pathologies. One of them was stunted in the jaw. It didn't, we don't believe it ever grew out of the jaw. It sort of became a big fat end to it. This one is in a lot of pieces that until we get it back together again, we're not really sure what the pathology is on it, but we're going to see if we can find out what that is. Now let's see if we can go. We're going to head into the beetle room. Hoping, Eileen, you can tell me if I'm making it shaking up too much. Lots of projects in the background that we've got working on, but in the beetle room, we have, like I said, Aaron is working on lots and lots of projects in our beetle. Aaron, can you open up one of the colonies?
Yeah, here.
We use to clean our skulls. We get the frozen specimen in. One thing I often point out to people is we do not kill animals for the skulls. That is not something I personally believe in. What we do is we get byproducts. They're alligator processing plant. They hunt the alligators every year for the meat, for the skin. We go and get the frozen heads, flesh them down, and then they go into our beetle colonies. These are what's called a catch colony. When the skull's done, they go in here so we don't lose any of the beetles. We want to make sure we keep all of our beetles back in our colonies. They're all friends of ours. We want to keep them with us. But if you pull off another colony, he'll show one with the actual beetles doing the work. Let's see if I can get this to show. If you look closely, kind of hard to see it. Can you see? That is a large gator skull from a gator. It was probably about 10 feet long. It has quite a few dermestids moving around. The larvae look like little caterpillars. They're the ones that do all the work. The adults really are just do reproducing. This particular skull, it's kind of hard to see, but in the middle of the top of the skull, that is a piece of wood. Somehow this poor guy got hit in the face with a piece of wood and it embedded into the actual bone of the skull. When we first got this frozen specimen, we could just barely see it. It was grown over. This is a pathology. This animal's injury probably occurred naturally and it survived it. When we're all done, we'll keep the wood with it because that's what allows us to do the teaching. Being able to see how that bone is impacted by the wood inside the skull. Now we have, it's kind of hard to see. See if I can get one of these beetles up in my hand. Let's see if he wants to be on camera. Nope, I just dropped him on the floor. Let's try a different beetle. Okay, I'm gonna try one more time, see if we can get one of our beetles to be, oh, there you go. Oh, the little, these dermestid beetles are the ones that do the work on the skulls. I often bring these into classrooms. Used to do a joke where I would say, if one of these get loose to the kids, remember that movie, The Mummy, when the beetles got underneath your skin? If they get loose, run for your life. And then I accidentally dropped one of the colonies and all the 5th graders ran out of the classroom. The teacher was not happy with me about that. So I don't do that joke anymore. But these are a natural carrion beetle. They don't eat live stuff. They only eat dead things. If you're driving down the road, you see a dead animal on the side of the road, that's what's going to get rid of that in nature, dermestid beetles. And we have, kind of hard to see, but all those yellow and black colonies behind Aaron, we have probably 1 million beetles in here. Those beetles are the ones that actually clean down the skulls and allow us to use them as comparative pieces in our teaching, in our comparisons, in our fossil work, so we know what to even look at. The other good thing about using the skulls, actually, I want to take that one down, the one below it. The other great thing about using the skulls is it also helps you when you've got a fossil that's broken apart in pieces. Using a modern comparison, like these more skulls that are being worked on right now by the beetles, it just makes it a little bit easier to put it together. One of the things we often offer, if you guys are, let's say you're out on the Peace River and you find a fragmentary fossil gator skull, get hold of us. If you just want to borrow a skull, we lend out ones to help you put them together. You find, which sometimes happens, a fossil horse skull. If you're really lucky but you get the pieces, it's so much easier when you have the comparative modern material to put your piece back together again. Just recently, we had somebody that had come in and used some of our modern llama bones to help put together their fossil llama finds from different sites around Florida. More than happy to work with you guys, help you figure that out, because that's sort of the reason of having this comparative collection, these fossils, these bones, and the little gator skulls. The gators are ones because in Florida, I'm trying to see if we can see that clearly. In Florida, we have a lot of gator material, fossil, and a lot of modern stuff. Neat thing about it, just recently, we started working on some fossil crocodile material that is about 40 million years old. It is almost exactly like the modern croc. The conservation of their form hasn't changed much over time. Same with some of our fossil rhino things that way. So we often clean the modern skulls and then work with the fossil version. Let's see if we can go back. And looking at some of the pieces, the modern pieces we often have ones that are not something you would find in our fossil record. Perfect example would be, this is a modern warthog. If you look closely at the nose there, that is sadly from a snare trap, a wire snare trap wrapped around the animal's snout. It survived it. This is a lot of growth involved in it. We don't have warthogs in Florida in our fossil record. We do have our fossil pigs and other fossil animals, but this particular one shows a very clear pathology that we wouldn't necessarily see in the fossil record. We'd see other ones. Is it a tooth grown impacted in the snout? Is it an injury from a predation, an animal attacking it? We do have a warthog with a broken lion tooth embedded in the skull. The interesting thing about it, there's bone grown all over the tooth of a lion. This animal was attacked by a lion, did not die from it, and had to have survived for quite a long time. Otherwise, it wouldn't have had the bone completely covering that broken tooth. And it was a pathology that occurred with it. The one other one that we like to show people is the pathology. Remember, we talked earlier about cancer. Sadly, this is a cow jaw. This is a cow jaw with a really cancerous growth on the jaw. We actually have a skull we had cleaned and sent out to a museum that has this cancerous growth on the cow skull is twice the size of the original skull. It is massive. That is something we haven't ever seen so far in the fossil record of that extent, but we do unfortunately see it quite a bit with some of our modern specimens that way. So again, using modern skulls to identify some of our fossil material and also to identify the story behind some of the pathologies we may have is a really good teaching tool, at least for us to use to work with people that way. In the Dino lab, we do a lot of those, the prep of the modern ones. If you guys ever come across fossil pathologies or even fossil specimens that you're not sure what they are and you want a little help with it, feel free to reach out to us. We're always willing to work with other people, show you what we have. We have a pretty good comparative collection of wolves and not saber cats, but cats in general. So you can compare. We have modern tapir bones and modern llama and camel to be able to compare to some of our fossil records. So, and we're always willing to help and work with you guys to be able to identify that stuff. So always feel free to get hold of us. We do actually live, I don't because I'm too old to understand how Instagram works, but Aaron and Maddie do a live show from the Dino lab all about some of the projects we're working on. And we help people identify some of the stuff that they may have, that we may have the modern version of. Ooh. And you guys have the fossil version of, like the cat Mike has. Looking at there's a lot of good fossil cat material in our fossil record here in Florida, and we often let people look at both the bobcat, the mountain lion, and even some of the African lion material we have that is smaller than the American lion in the fossil record, but it's very similar to it. So it helps people sort of identify. Again, there aren't any modern saber cats. I wish there were, but there isn't any. But it does, some of the other cat material does help you guys identify it that way. Are there any questions?
Looking at the stream, we got one question. How are they so white? Do you use bleach?
Very good question. And never, ever use bleach. Ever use bleach. Bleach damages bone, and over time will keep eating away at them. We use hydrogen peroxide, very similar to what you use to clean a cut. The hydrogen peroxide you buy at like Walgreens is 3%. We use a little stronger concentration, but you can get a stronger concentration of peroxide at like a beauty supply. They have 7% peroxide, which works a little bit better. The peroxide takes a little longer to clean and whiten your bones, but it breaks down to water and oxygen, so the bone doesn't keep degrading. Sadly, I've seen people use bleach on really cool skulls, and in a few years, the skull completely disintegrates and you lose your specimen.
So when I weigh those, these are actually some of your skulls, Chris, but I dyed those with.
Ruined them? Oh, you dyed them. Okay.
Maybe you tell people about the potassium permanganate and how they can.
Yeah, what Mike's showing is he's got a raccoon and a bobcat, and one of the techniques that sometimes can be used to make a skull look antiqued or fossilized is potassium permanganate, mixing that chemical with water. It's almost like a tea stain on the bone, similar to what you may find in the river. The challenge in Florida is our rivers have a lot of tannic acid in it. Oftentimes people find modern bones that are stained brown, sort of like what Mike was showing, but they're actually not fossilized because they've just been stained dark. It's a challenge to figure out exactly if they have or haven't been gone through a full fossilization. But if you're trying to make a modern skull look fossil, potassium permanganate works, tea works. I actually have seen a few specimens where people have soaked them in tea, and that actually will stain your bone. The challenge is making sure, for us, it's really important to remind people that that is making a modern skull look, but it's not a fossil. And it needs to be explained to people so they're not thinking, oh, I'm getting a fossil. No, it's a stained modern skull to make it look like the fossil, but it's a neat way to do it.
So the Purple Crow from Texas is asking if you could explain a little bit how you started your business.
You know, it's funny. I used to joke around that I grew up in a family with 6 siblings and I was the smallest person in the family. So I only got the bones of the chicken at the end of dinner and everybody else ate the meat. But that's not really how I started. I started when I worked at Busch Gardens. I would use a lot of live animals in our teaching. And at one point I had a chance to use some bones, some soft shell turtle bones. I love turtles. And watching how much impact those bones had on the kids, even compared to a live animal, because they could see what the insides were, what made the animal move, what made the animal. It was very powerful as an educator. So I started working with learning how to do skulls and skeletons. Even before I really started using them to compare to fossil animals, I was using it to help educate kids, adults on what makes us move. I'm fascinated by natural history, but even more so by the natural history we don't always get to see, and that's the internal structure of the bones and all. So over the time, I've learned a lot of techniques working with a lot of other wonderful people on how to do skulls, how to do skeletons, and how to use them with the fossils.
Chuck Duncan is asking, have you read much about the T-Rex Sue and her pathologies?
I have. I've actually I've handled a few of Sue's bones when she was being prepared. Some of the tail material was being prepared at Disney early on at the Animal Kingdom. Amazing material. Cool thing about it, and a lot of people already know this, but most all adult T-Rex material we have, all of it, has pathologies. It appears that Tyrannosaurids by nature were constantly biting each other. Is it dominance? Is it breeding? That is not quite sure. But there definitely is some amazing pathologies. I was up at the Field Museum about a year ago, and we were looking at the skull of Sue, and it's unreal how much pathology, but what's cool about it is the injuries and the healing is not at the same time. It's multiple times over and over again. And you can really see that it is different bites because the amount of growth that are in some of those pathologies.
Leo Hunter is asking if you could explain or tell what the ceratopsian skull is mounted on your wall. He said it was really cool and he wanted to hear about it.
Oh, well, no, I think he's talking about the Styracosaurus head on the wall. That is the head off of one of the animatronics, I believe. Let's see if I can do it without, let's see, over there in the background. It's the life-size head of a Styracosaurus, one of the ceratopsians from the Judith River Formation and the Two Medicine Formation. That is from the company I worked with doing the Dr. Dino is a company called the Billings Productions. They rent animatronic life-size animatronics to zoos and museums. And that particular head was a gift from the owner of it to me that was pretty cool. It's a 8-foot tall head that I tried to bring into my house and didn't realize it was way too big to bring down the hallway. Plus the fact my wife didn't really want me to have it in my house. So.
A lady named Lindsay says, hello, Dad.
Oh, it's my daughter, Lindsay, who works at the Children's Museum in Indianapolis. Great dinosaur museum.
And unless a question comes up right away, it looks like, nope. Oh, how can someone start their own domestic beetle colony?
They could reach out to me through chris@educationalbiofacts.com. We're more than happy to ship you a small jar. Doesn't take a lot of them. We'll send you a jar of beetles. I love getting people involved with this because it really is amazing to see what makes an animal tick. The other thing is I work with a lot of zoos and private breeders. When an animal passes away, if we just bury it, then it no longer teaches us. But if we use it with the domestic beetle colonies, things like that, then it becomes a teaching tool that lives on beyond us. And so, Mike, please, feel free to share my email. We'll send out. We can send beetles. We have a paper I wrote years ago on how to do domestic beetles. It's not very difficult. They take a little bit of work. They've got to be kept dry. They like to be given a lot of encouragement, tell them they've done a good job and everything, eating the bugs. But they are pretty easy to do, and they are a great way of producing your own. We work with a lot of educators, teachers, and other educators can buy skulls from different companies. But it's even better if they just go out and do it themselves. They learn the technique. I've got students we teach how to do bones here in the lab. So feel free to reach out to us. We're constantly doing that. We are working with the Orlando Fossil Club doing an open house in the Dino lab in February. And I mentioned to Mike that, we're more than happy to do one for the Tampa Bay Club, just so you can see how to do it. It really isn't difficult. And it is pretty fascinating to see some of the things that come out of the bone structure.
We're getting a lot of thank yous coming across, a lot of appreciation. So when you go, this will be downloaded onto our YouTube channel, so you can get the link and send it out to use as you wish. But we will lose all of the current comments on here. So I tell you, there was a lot of folks thanking you and appreciate you put on the show for us tonight.
A little bit more also what we do, like I said, Aaron and Maddie do a live Instagram on Dino Depot. Instagram, and it's a little bit about what we're working on. They try to do it once a week so we can kind of keep people up to date. If people are looking for help with things or identifying, that's one of the ones we do. I don't understand how that stuff works because I'm old as a dinosaur. I had a kid recently ask me, did I ever ride a dinosaur? And my answer was no, but boy, I wish I could.
Well, one last question we just got in. Will you be at Fossil Fest?
I am fully planning on being at Fossil Fest. We're going to have a nice display and some different things. And again, if any of you have items that you found in the fossil and you want to help, want us to help you identify it, we'll be bringing a lot of the commonly found material and some of the uncommon. We're going to be bringing some of the taper material, modern taper, to help people identify some of their taper, some armadillo material, and even some of somebody recently asked me about helping to identify. They believe they have some cat bones, and we have some different skeletons of different cats and stuff like that. And a lot of the other individuals who are trying to figure out what their fossils are. We often have to help people like, a friend of mine, Tony Perez, who's really bad at identifying fossils. I'm always having to help use modern stuff to help him identify stuff. He's also standing right here in the Dino lab at the moment too. So
Tony's there?
yeah, Tony's there. We even let him in once in a while.
Hello, everybody.
He's much older than I, so we let him in here to show what dinosaurs were really like.
Well, I thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you at Fossil Fest in March. I hope that all works out for all of us.
Sounds great.
I appreciate you being here tonight. And
Thank you very much, Mike and Eileen, and for helping, having me here. Barbara for inviting me. Thank you guys very much.
and thank you to your crew as well.
Oh, yep. Thanks, Maddie,
Yeah,
and
thanks so much.
everybody else. So, and again, feel free, guys, if anybody wants our help, we'd love to help identify stuff and figure out what you got out here. Keep out, like Mike said earlier, get out there. There's a ton of fossils out waiting to be found by somebody.
Before you go, throw your email out one more time for us.
It's chris@educationalbiofacts.com.
Thank you. We had people.
And I can add that into the video post-production. And if you give me the Instagram, I can add that too.
The Dino Depot,
Yes.
just Dino Depot,
Dino Depot.
just Dino Depot. Yep,
Okay, perfect.
perfect. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. You're welcome to hang around and watch us close this out, or you can get back to. Oh, you got to get on the road. So
You got to get on the road to head to New Orleans.
safe travels.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
See you,
Thank
Mike.
you.
Yep.
So so I'm going to give away the prizes here in a second. Right away, if you like the newsletter, please, if you're not in the club, please join. It's a good gift if you got some kids or friends who like fossils, you might want to buy them a membership. We don't put the fossil newspaper out anywhere online. It's only available to members in hard copy or electronic copy, unless you guys are sneaking it to non-members on the backside. But we have tracers on that. We LoJack those copies. But anyway, please join. Keep your dues up to date. We haven't really lost a terrible amount of people through COVID since March, but we have lost some. We're not quite as big as we were leading into the show, but a lot of that might have to do with that we get a lot of people sign up at the show, and we lost that in March. We're doing good financially. We're doing good with our members. So hang in there. We'll get this all back on the road as soon as we can. So I want to give my phone number out one time so that Eileen only has to scrub it one time. So if you're ready. And I'm going to do remember we have the dinosaur notepads, 4 of them. The deer toe bones glued together wrong. Fix them or don't fix them. And I was corrected by Joe Brandon, who would certainly know that this is not Nidea, that this is a little bit more rare. I'll say it, Diplomystus. So a little more rare than Nidea. I'm hoping whoever gets this, I don't have to mail it because chances are you won't get it right, or it'll be a pile of chalk. So that being said, I'm going to take the 5th caller. Don't call yet. I can write down 5th caller for these, the 8th caller for these, and the 10th caller for the fish. So don't forget to sign up or contact Sina to volunteer for Fossil Fest. Reen Verbeek, you're our 1st caller. Andrew Ingleson, you're our 2nd caller. Andrew Ingleson, you're our 3rd caller. Not a lot of people playing tonight. Reen Verbeek, our 4th caller. Next caller is going to win the notepads. Marcos. Teresa Fava. Well, it's Teresa. Teresa won these. For some reason, I can't pick it up. Teresa Fava. I don't know. You'll hear me in a second when it comes through. Teresa, you there? Phone has trouble. It gets a lot of calls. Okay, so going on to the deer, Odocoilus virginiensis. Reen Verdick is the 6th caller. This was a lot faster last time. Newport Richie, somebody is the 7th caller. Maddie Verdick. Maddie? Hey, Maddie. So Maddie won the deer toe bones. Like I said before, you can glue them together or fix them if you want, or they look kind of okay the way they are. So there's our winner, Maddie. And that was the 8th caller. Thank you. And Rain is a 9th caller. And hello, who's this? Hello. I got a winner. Stop calling.
Okay, let me see your phone. You can call him back.
That was all of a sudden. It was a lot of calls. We're pulling up the number that was the 10th call here. Yep, Illinois. Whew. Geneva.
Hello?
Hello, this is Mike from the Fossil Club.
Hi, Donna Kruzanowski.
Hi, Donna. You won the fish. So Donna Kruzanowski won the fish. I'll text you back after the meeting sometime and figure out how to get that to you. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for playing.
It was a wonderful presentation.
Well, thank you, ma'am. Are you in Illinois or are you in Florida?
I'm in Florida.
Okay, good. All right, I'll text you back.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Thank you. All right, so that's all the prizes. My phone's still ringing off the hook. I've gotten 49 phone calls in the last 7 minutes. But anyway, so we got our prize winners. Reminder, please contact Cena, Tampa Bay Fossil Club at msn.com to volunteer. Or you can call her. The phone number is in the newsletter. Join the club to get the newsletter. Keep your dues up to date. Happy January. That's all I got, Eileen. What do you got?
All right, nope, we're good to go. All right,
All right,
thanks, everybody.
Have a safe year, everyone. Peace. Take care of each other.